Because my video on what if Greece was a Pokemon region was so well received by you guys, I've decided to turn that type of fictional region video into a series for my channel. In case you haven't seen my video about what a Greek-based Pokemon region might be like, essentially what I do in these videos is talk about what real-life countries and areas might be like as Pokemon regions, including places and locations that might fit well, potential story elements and plot points, and of course, brand new Pokemon these hypothetical regions could have. Just so we're clear, today's region was one I was working on alongside the Greek-based one, so it's sort of grandfathered in and not really one that was requested by you guys. Fear not though, as I've been reading your suggestions on where to make these videos on, and the next regional video is going to be one of the more requested ones I've seen from the comments. So feel free to keep requesting cool places you'd like to see these types of videos on. I guess there's only a few things I need to cover before we get started. The first is that this video isn't meant to be speculation on a new Pokemon game's region. Many people will probably see this video at different times, and just know that if a new Pokemon game is coming out and the region has similarities to the one I'll be talking about today, that I had no idea and this video was never meant to be serious speculation in any way towards the mainline games. The second thing is that I might have gone a little overboard with ideas, so this video will be a little longer. I've actually broken the video up into different parts, being the locations and areas, potential new characters and plot points, and brand new Pokemon. So if you only want to see what new Pokemon I think might be in this region, or just want to know what the hypothetical towns could be like, feel free to skip around. Okay, without further ado, let's get cracking and talk about what the Western United States might be like as a Pokemon region. Unlike my videos on England and Greece, I've actually had experience living in the Western United States, and because of that, I can kind of speak a little more accurately as to what it's like in real life and places and things that would be cool to see. Also, as an added bonus, I'll be able to pronounce things right too. No more Middlesbroughs! One thing we should cover before getting too in-depth with this region is what exactly the Western United States is compared to the rest of the United States. You'd technically be right if you said it's the western side of the country, but there's a little more to it than that. The United States is broken up into 50 individual states, which are then actually grouped together in various ways based on their location. One of the many ways they're grouped together is in 4 various regions, which are the Northeast, South, Midwest, and Western United States. This is the area today's regional video is going to be based around. In terms of size, this is the largest region of the US and is made up of 13 different states, which are Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, Alaska, and Hawaii. While I would have loved to include all 13 of these states in this hypothetical region, I did have to exclude a few of them for various reasons. I'm leaving out Hawaii because there's already an official region based off of it, Alaska because I think it's large enough to be its own Pokemon region I might make a video on someday, New Mexico because I've planned for it to be part of another regional video, and the southern part of Arizona because the spin-off region of Ore was actually based on this location. Even though I'm unfortunately leaving these places out of the video, the other 9.5 states that will be included give us a lot to work with. Like, there's so much to the western US that it was really hard to try and simplify and, in a sense, shrink it into a Pokemon region. Besides being a very modern part of the world with up-to-date technology and larger cities, it's also a very terse and rugged place with harsher environments than most other places in the United States. On top of all that, it has tons of landmarks, legends, and history that can be shifted into a fresh-feeling Pokemon region. Before we get into all that stuff though, I want to briefly talk about one of the, in my opinion, biggest draws the Western US has, which is its incredibly diverse geography. I know I probably sound a little biased by saying that, but there's a ton of different environments that all come together to make up the Western United States, and I think that if it ever were a Pokemon region, it would offer a lot of diversity as far as terrain and surroundings go. There's the coastal areas by California, the mountain and forested places towards Washington, Oregon, and Montana, the dry and arid desert environments of Nevada, Utah, and Arizona, the plains and grasslands of Idaho and Wyoming, and even places where it snows towards the eastern side like Colorado. With such a heavy supply of diverse areas, I really think that a region based on this setting could truly shine. Adding on to that, I think there would be a very wide variety of Pokemon you would find while just exploring and adventuring through the rugged terrain. Based on real-life animals in the western US, there could be Pokemon such as Wailmer, Wailord, Seal, Stunky, Skuntank, Vulpix, and Spearow by the coastal and seaside areas. Plains and grasslands could have many livestock-based Pokemon such as Bouffalant, Miltank, Mareep, Flaffy, and Ponyta, while also maybe having Rufflets and Braviary. The arid deserts could have Pokemon like LGM, Behem, Skorupi, Drapion, Ekans, Arbok, Salandit, and Torkoal, while the more forested and mountainous places of the region could have things like Meowth, Persian, Teddiursa, Ursaring, Deerling, Sawsbuck, Pachirisu, and Zigzagoon. There really would be a diverse group of Pokemon that would inhabit this region, and that's just talking about the ones that are officially Game Freak made. There's quite a few ideas I have for potential new Pokemon that could inhabit this region, including regional forms and legendaries, but I'll save all my ideas for these possible new Pokemon until a little later in the video. One last thing to mention about the region's geography that ties into both official Pokemon that can be included as well as bridges us into the locations and towns part of this video is that the western United States has a ton of fossils in it. If you can believe it, it's actually in the top 3 places worldwide that has the highest amount and variety of fossils. In terms of dig sites, there's over 100 unique areas where paleontologists have discovered and keep discovering new fossils and dinosaur bones. The reason I bring this up is for a couple reasons. The first is that I think it would be really cool if there were fossil dig sites all around the region that you could access and use to dig up various Pokemon fossils that you could then restore. Way back in Generation 4, there was actually a mining mini-game in the underground where you could unearth fossils and other items, and I think it would be neat if that idea was brought back and expanded upon. This way we could have a lot of past fossil Pokemon in the region while also having a unique mining activity that you could do as well. The other reason I wanted to bring up fossils is that I actually think they could play a major part in the narrative and plot of this region. While we're not quite to the story section yet, I think that the regional professor, as well as possibly the evil team, could all be involved with the many fossils of this region in some way. I'll talk more about all that though when we get to the story section. For now, let's switch over to the potential towns, locations, and areas this region could have. We've already seen that this region can be diverse as far as terrain goes, but now I want to show you some of the towns and places I think would fit in well with this hypothetical region. As I've mentioned, the real-life western United States has kind of an air of ruggedness and adventure to it, and I really think that this Pokemon region should have that kind of vibe all throughout it. While I did think about the possibility of having the player start off in a town based off of Los Angeles or even Seattle, I think that instead, keeping with this kind of rugged theme, the player should start off on the eastern side of the region in the more unsettled and wild areas. Now, I'm not saying that the eastern side of the western US in real life is uninhabited or untamed, but there's not as many large cities there, and it does generally have more mountains and less populated places, which would make for a nice beginning area. For the starting location, I think that the town or general area of Casper, Wyoming would be pretty fitting for one. It's a relatively small town that's located roughly in the easternish side of Wyoming, and tying back into what I was saying before, I think it would be an interesting idea if you started off in this relatively small town in the middle of plains, mountains, and farmlands, and as you went west you'd start to encounter larger cities and locations. Another reason I chose Casper as a possible starting town is that it was one of the cities that was part of something called the Oregon Trail in the 1830s. In the early United States history, the Oregon Trail was a route that pioneers took from Independence, Missouri to the state of Oregon. This trail passed through many different states and areas on the way westward, including Wyoming, Idaho, and of course Oregon, and is considered by many to be one of the biggest events in the western United States history. I really wanted to somehow incorporate this into the region, and I think that if a couple of the early routes you went on had homages to it, it would be the perfect way to subtly reference this event. Like maybe the early routes that lead to a city based in Oregon could have famous Oregon Trail landmarks such as Independence Rock, Soda Springs, or any number of the numerous forts that existed during the time. Alright, let's set off from our hometown now and journey west to the first city I think you would encounter on your journey. After going through an area based on the Salmon Falls Reservoir in the state of Idaho, which in the region can be home to many fish Pokemon like Remoraid or Basculin, you would come to a town loosely inspired by the city of Boise. Boise is, for all intents and purposes, just a normal town. It's the capital of Idaho and has a few points of interest, such as the Botanical Gardens, its football stadium, or even Lucky Peak Lake that could be cool areas to explore if this were a city in Pokemon. In region, I don't think this will be a very big town, but just a nice first town you journey to after leaving your hometown. Continuing on with your journey westward, you would end up in the state of Oregon, more specifically a city based on Portland, Oregon. This is a pretty big city which has a very distinct feature to it. A giant river runs right through the middle of it. I think there's a lot of cool possibilities a town based off of the city could do, and I'm kind of imagining that in-game, the town would be based solely around the river, with various buildings on either side of it. Portland has numerous museums, parks, and gardens that can be included, and in fact there's even something called the Portland Japanese Garden, which is styled after a traditional garden from Japan. It might be kind of cool to have this type of garden in the town, but maybe have it referencing the Japanese-based Pokemon regions, such as Kanto or Johto. Maybe even Erika or a Johto Kimono girl could make an appearance here. Now that we've made it to the end of this route chain, so to speak, let's briefly go back to the starting town, and I'll detail a different path through this region so we can see some more towns and locations. If you go south from the Casper-inspired starting town, you would end up in a city based on the real-life cities of Boulder and Denver, Colorado. I couldn't decide on which one I wanted this town to be based off of, so I decided to have this Pokemon city be based partially off both of them. This town and the surrounding routes would be the region's resident snowy areas and can include some famous landmarks such as Dinosaur Ridge, which is where a lot of dinosaur bones were discovered, the Pearl Street Mall, which is a well-liked mall in the area, and the Chamberlain Observatory. Once leaving this town, you could then journey to a location based on a place in Utah known as Park City. The reason I decided on Park City over the state's capital Salt Lake City was because in the past, Park City was a very big mining town where pioneers would gather to mine for ore and minerals. This could make for a neat basis of a town, kind of like an updated Oreburgh City from Sinnoh, and they could also incorporate mining for Pokemon fossils here too. Aside from the deep-rooted mining connections, there's also a lot of recreational activities in Park City, such as skiing and mountain biking, and the area is well known as one of the best places in the western US to do these things at. I think it would be fitting to reference that by having either an ice-type gym leader who runs a ski resort gym in the town, or perhaps even a rock-type gym leader who's a mountain biker. Now, even though I kind of left out Salt Lake City as one of the towns, I think the actual Great Salt Lake itself would be a great landmark to include in the region. The Great Salt Lake is the largest lake in the western United States, and if I've learned anything from Pokemon, it's that lake areas usually have some of the best music, as well as some engaging and unique events happening at them. An interesting thing about the Great Salt Lake is that in real life it has a really high saline or salt level, so most aquatic life can't really live there. Only things like algae and shrimp have found a way to survive, so they could reference that in-game by having a ton of Clawheads and maybe even Skrelp and Dragalge residing in it. Getting back on our journey and moving west towards the coast once more, we would come across a very long route that would essentially be this region's desert. In real life, the arid Great Basin Desert occupies most of Nevada and would definitely be the desert route of this region. Aside from having a lot of ground and poison types scattered throughout the scorched terrain, I also had an idea for this region's signature ghost type area, which could be an abandoned ghost town like what you would see in a classic western movie. Nevada is known to have quite a few of these places, so it wouldn't be too far-fetched to have a deserted town like this you could discover off the beaten path and find all sorts of ghost type Pokemon. After making it through the desert and going through a town based on Reno, Nevada, you would finally be in the most westward part of the region, which would be based on the state of California. Now is finally the time we can talk about a few of the California-based towns and areas this region might have, and some of the significant landmarks that could be included as well. Now I've just got to say right now, California is one of the states that is large enough and has enough interesting and cool places inside of it that it could, in all honesty, be a Pokemon region all on its own. At the same time, however, I felt like I had to include it in this western US region because it is one of the defining areas of the West. Because it's going to be part of a much larger region in this video, I did have to scale some things down and move things around. So the cities might not be 100% accurate or representative of real-life California. If you guys are interested in seeing me potentially make a What If California Was a Pokemon Region video where I go more in depth on it, then feel free to let me know in the comments. For now though, let's talk about some of the possible California-based cities and towns this western US region could have. The first city I think the player would come across would be one based on the peninsula of San Francisco, complete with a Pokéworld Golden Gate Bridge. Because there's so much to this city, it was really hard to narrow down what real-life things to include. I mean, there's parks, museums, art galleries, aquariums, Chinatown, Alcatraz beaches, and tons more points of interest in this city. What I ultimately came up with was a somewhat larger city that has sort of two parts to it. A more building-oriented and skyscraper area, which could have things like a marine biology institution, an art gallery, and a street based on Chinatown, while the other part of the city would be an area based off of the many wharfs that are scattered throughout real-life San Francisco and could have some fun side activities and mini-games the player could compete in. When leaving from this town, the player can either go south to a Los Angeles-based city, which I'll talk about in a second, or north to go through a forest based on the Redwood National Park. The Redwood National Park, commonly referred to as the Redwoods, is a very large forest in the northern part of California that consists of redwood trees. Redwood trees are very large and very old, and I feel if we had a forest based around them, it would offer a very different atmosphere that we don't usually see with the more standard forests in Pokemon games. Going through this forest, you would arrive in the Portland town, so let's instead go back through the Pokeverse San Francisco and journey down the coastline to the other California-based city this region would definitely have: Los Angeles. LA is pretty big to say the least. It's the second largest city in the United States and would most definitely be the standout big city of this region. There is no way I could ever address all the things I'd like to see in this Pokemon city, but I'm going to try my best. First off, I think that PokeStar Studios, the side activity from Unova where you can make movies with Pokemon, should come back and be part of this city. Hollywood Studios, which is an area in LA, is the premier place for movies to be made in the US, and with PokeStar Studios already existing within the Pokemon world, I think it would be great to bring back that idea and expand upon it. Maybe the PokeStar Studios in this region could be the main studio, while the one from Black and White 2 was a Unova extension, and it could add in tons more movies and cameos from cool characters all across the Pokemon world. I also think it'd be awesome to have a gym leader that's an experienced actor, too. Another big thing in the Los Angeles area is theme parks. Technically the theme parks are located in Anaheim, California, but for the sake of this regional video, I'm looping them into this LA-based city. In my mind, I'm imagining that there would be a theme park in this town, or perhaps on a route by the town that's reminiscent of Disneyland and Universal Studios. The proposed area is something I'm tentatively calling Pikaland. With this theme park area, not only would there be a few rides you could go on, but I'd also love it if a gym was located inside of it too. You could battle a bunch of Pokemaniacs dressed as Pokemon, and eventually make it to the gym leader, who would be an electric type specialist that would be dressed in what else but a Pikachu costume. Outside of PokeStar Studios and some kind of theme park, this LA-based town would be a giant area to explore. Stores, various buildings and institutes, museums, laboratories, and other places of interest would all be found in the seaside metropolis. Think of Lumio City, but right next to the ocean, and that's kind of what I'm imagining this Pokemon City would be like. Okay, we're almost done with the location section, but there's just a few other areas I briefly want to jump to and talk about before switching to the characters and story stuff. The first is a location that will be accessible from the Los Angeles-based town. It would be a group of islands based off of the California Channel Islands. In real life, these are 8 islands which are just off the coast of Southern Cali, and considering we haven't had many water routes to go through yet, I think it would be a nice change of pace to have this archipelago be part of and explorable in this region. The final location I want to talk about, and it feels weird to say that because I have so many more ideas for places and areas that didn't make the final cut of this video, is a place I think could be this region's battle frontier. I know that we haven't really had a battle frontier in a Pokemon game for a while, but this is an idea I thought of almost immediately when putting together this video, and I think it could be great, or at the very least, interesting. Alright, so bear with me here, but what if this region's battle frontier was based on Las Vegas, Nevada? Vegas, which is known more for gambling and other activities, might be better suited for something like an updated Game Corner, but seeing as how the Game Corner might never come back to Pokemon, I think they could shift this city into a brand new battle frontier instead. The key to all of this is the Las Vegas Strip. The Las Vegas Strip is a 4.2 mile long strip of land that houses a lot of Vegas's casinos and hotels. When I say a lot, I need to clarify that there's over 15 major casinos and hotels that are on the strip. They're definitely one of the defining features of Vegas, and I think it would work surprisingly well if the Battle Frontier facilities were based on some of these casinos and were located along a giant street you could explore. I won't go through all of my ideas for possible casino-inspired Battle Frontier buildings, but just to talk about a few, there could be a building based on the Bellagio called the Battle Hotel. I had an idea where it could function similarly to the Black Tower from Pokemon Black 2, where a bunch of rooms are connected in a maze and you have to find a certain trainer to unlock a door to face a boss trainer. I imagine the Battle Hotel would have a similar concept, except you're constantly battling to try and get a key to take an elevator up to the next floor. The goal would be to make your way through each floor of the hotel to try and reach the top and challenge the Battle Hotel manager. The next frontier building idea I have is something called the Battle Circus, which could be based on the casino Circus. My idea for this circus themed building is that every battle would have some kind of twist randomly added to it. Like, for example, your first battle could be a normal 1v1, then your next battle could be an inverse battle, then perhaps a triple battle, then maybe back to a normal one, and then perhaps a battle royale even. When I think of a circus, I think of crazy off-the-walls excitement, and making it so every battle you have in there has a randomly added twist to it would be rather interesting and would keep you in constant excitement. I had a few other ideas for possible buildings I wanted to share, like a Unova-themed building based on the New York Casino, as well as an updated battle pyramid based on the Luxor Casino, but I think you guys get the general gist of what I'd like to see, so I'll leave my other ideas for another time. Vegas is a place that I feel fits surprisingly well with the idea of a battle frontier, and I think it would be a neat post-game area that would present a more laid-back and entertainment-based vibe compared to the rough and harsh adventuring that would encompass almost everywhere else in the region. Now that we know a little bit about what this region could possibly be like in terms of towns, locations, and environments, I want to go over what I think the characters and story of this region could be like. Unlike the Greek region video where everything seemed to fit together very easily, I found it a little bit hard to think of characters and story points for this region. Talking about some of the characters first, I think that the professor for this region should be somebody whose area of research is Pokemon fossils. A Pokemon paleontologist, if you will. We've never had a professor like this before, and as I mentioned towards the start of the video, the Western US has one of the highest concentrations of fossils in the world. I think that aspect should play a fairly prominent role with the regional professor, as well as some of the other characters of this region, such as the Evil Team. Speaking of the Evil Team, I actually came up with an idea that I'm semi-proud of. While I found it to be pretty difficult to think of gym leaders and Elite Four members, which I'll talk about in a second, the concept and theme of the Evil Team came pretty easy to me. Without further ado, I present to you the Evil Team of the Western United States region, Team Relic. It's probably pretty obvious from how they look, but I think this evil team should be based on Old West cowboys, or I guess in this case, they'd be notorious outlaws. Now, as far as what they would do, their ultimate goal would be something involving the many fossils of the region, and I imagine that as you went on your journey, you'd constantly bump into them at fossil dig sites, big cities, museums, and even research laboratories they may be trying to take over for nefarious purposes. What do they want with Pokemon fossils? Well, I think their endgame would be to try and locate and revive an ancient, fossilized legendary Pokemon and use it to not only restore all of the other fossil Pokemon of the region, but use it to destroy the region as a whole and revert it back to how it was in prehistoric times. That probably sounds pretty crazy for an evil team's plans. Or maybe it's not too insane, but I think their goal in many ways would be symbolic and referential of a theme that was in a few Old West movies. In some old Western films, there's an idea or theme about how a cowboy or group of cowboys has to deal with the idea of the world getting more modern and the concept of a cowboy dying out. It's usually played pretty sad, but that's just how the world works. With time, ideas and trends get outdated or unnecessary and are eventually left in the past, much like disco, Sprite Remix, and the olden days cowboy. This is what I'd like the evil team of the region to represent, the idea of cowboys who are fighting to keep a certain time period alive and don't want to modernize or adapt to the current world. At this point, the other non-fossil legendary would come into play to aid the player in putting a stop to the evil team's plans. While the fossil legendary would represent being steadfast and unmoving with your beliefs and ideals, which would fit in with the evil team's ideology and goals, the other legendary would represent the opposite of that, which is the concept of being fluid and moving on and adapting. These are two ideas that are equally important and thought-provoking, and neither is necessarily better or more right than the other, which is how I feel Pokemon legendary pairs should be handled. And that's sort of the basic premise of not just these Pokemon, but what this region's story and evil team's goal might be like. Of course, I cranked up the intensity of their plan a little bit, so instead of just wanting the region to be more Old West-like, they wanted everything to be like how it was when the Poke dinosaurs roamed the earth. But I still feel like this story concept would fit into this region rather well. I mentioned earlier how I'd thought of some gym leader ideas for this region, but unfortunately I don't have enough time to share them all. They weren't really that unique, but instead just common professions and activities that happen in the western US, like a grass-type farmer gym leader or a water-type marine biologist gym leader. We've already talked so much about the evil team and potential story of this region that I think you guys get the general feeling of what I'd like to see out of this region's story and characters. Moving on to the final part of this video, I want to end on potential new Pokemon I think this region might have. I've already teased and talked about a few of them already, but now I want to focus exclusively on what new monsters might fit in with a Western United States inspired locale. For this region, I came up with 8 different Pokemon ideas, 3 regional forms, 3 common Pokemon, and 2 legendaries. There's kind of a lot to go over, so I'll just try to give you the bullet points on what the Pokemon are, including possible types and abilities, and why exactly I think they'd fit in. Starting with the regional forms, I think there are 3 Pokemon that would work well with the Western US regional variant. It's worth noting that at this point in time, we don't know if regional Pokemon forms, such as Alolan forms, are going to be something that continues on with the franchise moving forward. But assuming that it does, and that we'll get non-Alolan regional variants of Pokemon, here's some ideas for Western United States inspired forms. The first 2 ideas I have actually involve 2 Pokemon that were already given Alolan forms, Meowth and Persian. While the regular Meowth line is normal type and their Alolan counterparts become dark type, I'm envisioning the Meowth and Persian of this region to become rock type. The reason for this is that they'd have adapted to the harsh, rugged climate of the mountainous areas and shifted to become more like a cougar or mountain lion, which are pretty common in North America, especially the mountainous west. I was tempted to just think of a brand new cougar Pokemon, but with Persian being based on a larger cat, I feel that they might as well take advantage of its species to make a cool regional form for both it and Meowth. The third Pokemon I think should get a regional form is Torkoal. In the Mojave Desert, which covers parts of California, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona, there lives a species of tortoise known as the desert tortoise. This is an animal that has adapted to the arid environment and lives in the extreme heat and desolate habitat of the area. This got me thinking about turtle and tortoise Pokemon that could possibly live and adapt in this type of location, and I think that the desert tortoise style Torkoal would work the best out of all the others. This would be a type of Torkoal that, instead of living in fire and volcanic environments, adapted to the dry and desert terrain, becoming a ground or possibly even a ground fire type in the process. It could also have an ability like Dry Skin or perhaps even Sandstream to further show how in tune with the desert it is. Switching over now to common Pokemon you'd find all around the region, the first is a Pokemon based on a Gila monster, which is a venomous lizard that is native to parts of Mexico, as well as many areas of the western US, such as Arizona, Nevada, and California. I mean, the thing has monster in its name, so it would already be a good fit for Pokemon, but alongside that, the Gila monster is a poisonous lizard that lives in the desert. We've had lizard Pokemon before, but if this Gila monster Pokemon had a typing like ground poison, it would definitely set it apart, while also making the arid environments of this region feel a little more treacherous surface with these guys laying around it. Another animal I'd like to see turned into a Pokemon for this region is something called a jackalope. This is a mythological animal that has appeared numerous times throughout North America's folklore and is said to be the combination of a jackrabbit and an antelope. As far as typing goes, I think fairy fighting would be the way to do this thing justice. Fairy type because it's based on a mythological folklore animal, and fighting because in many legends it's said to be very hostile and aggressive. The final non-legendary I'd like to see is a Pokemon based around a Native American dreamcatcher. This would be the inanimate object Pokemon for the region and would be based on the concept of a Pokemon that catches and affects dreams. In case you're unfamiliar with the idea of dream catchers, in some Native American cultures, they're believed to filter out and catch bad dreams before they get into a person's mind. This is a really interesting concept to me, and I think that there's enough inspiration here that a Pokemon could be based around the idea. I think this Pokemon could be a Fairy and Dark type that has a focus on sleep-related moves and abilities. Sleep-related moves like Hypnosis, Yawn, and Dream Eater would all be part of its moveset, while its ability could either be Comatose, allowing the Pokemon to only be put to sleep while it wouldn't be affected by any other status effects, or the ability Insomnia, which would make it impossible to put it to sleep. Alright, to close out this regional video, I want to discuss a couple of the legendaries I think this region might have. I already touched a little bit upon the idea of them, but now I can finally go more in depth on these two possible legendaries. The fossil legendary would be based on something called the Cactus Cat and have a typing of rock grass. The Cactus Cat is a mythological animal said to live in the western US, and it gets its name because it's said to be covered by lots of spikes and quills, and also cuts open cacti to drink the juice inside. Not only can this creature look intimidating, but would also be a force to be reckoned with. For its ability, I think it could have, in a sense, an upgraded Chlorophyll type ability. While Chlorophyll raises the Pokemon's speed in sunlight, I think this legendary's ability could sharply raise its speed in both sunlight and rain. It's probably not a super exciting ability, and I'm sure you guys can think of better ones, but this legendary would be part rock type, and if its speed was able to be raised that dramatically, it could do pretty well in battle, I feel like. I also mentioned earlier how it would represent the concept of being steadfast and unmoving with your beliefs and ideals, which is pretty symbolic of why the evil team would want to revive it and harness its power. This philosophy would also be a perfect parallel to its counterpart legendary, which let's switch over to and talk about. The second legendary of the region, which would represent moving on, changing, and adapting in life, would be based on a wolf and have a typing of Psychic Ghost. The reason I went with a wolf is because number one, you get kind of a cats versus dogs dynamic between the two legendaries, and number two, it's based on a famous Native American legend, which is where part of its typing comes from. Wolves are generally seen as very spiritual, emotional, and philosophical animals, which is where the psychic part of the typing comes from, and in one Native American legend, a wolf is said to be the first animal to experience death, which is where the ghost part of the typing comes from. As far as abilities go, I really don't have any ideas for this wolf legendary. I was thinking of maybe an ability that raises this Pokemon's defense or attack every time another one of your party Pokemon is knocked out, but even that I'm not 100% sold on. Hopefully you guys can think of some good ideas, because now that we've made it to the end of the video, I am creatively spent. And there we go! That's all of my ideas for what a Western United States-based Pokemon region could be like. Well, at least all of the ideas I had time to fit into this video. I had tons more ideas, but I tried really hard to keep this video as short as possible. Even though right now it's way over the 15 minutes I originally planned. I just couldn't help it though. The Western US could make for a really interesting region, with diverse environments, interesting cities and landmarks, the potential for engaging characters, and of course, all the inspiration for awesome and unique new Pokemon. This is an area I'd love to see a Pokemon region on someday. Anyways, what do you guys think? Do you like the idea and concept of this region? Maybe I missed some cool ideas for Pokemon or locations. With the Greek region video, you guys left some awesome ideas and feedback, so feel free to do the same in this video's comment section too. Thanks for watching you guys, and I'll catch you later.